The great space station Kepler turned slowly in the empty darkness between stars. Its metal walls stretched for miles in every direction, home to millions of beings from across the galaxy. Inside one of its largest buildings, the Galactic Academy of Sciences buzzed with activity. Professor Zexthara stood at the front of the classroom, her crystal body catching the artificial light. She was tall and thin, like a living diamond that could think and speak. Her voice rang out clear and musical as she addressed her students. "Today I have something special to share with you all," she said, her crystal face reflecting the eager faces of her alien students. "We have been offered a rare chance to visit one of the most dangerous worlds in our galaxy." The classroom fell silent. Students from a dozen different worlds leaned forward in their seats. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking plants. But all of them shared the same curious expression. "We are going to Earth," Professor Zexthara continued. "It is what we call a Deathworld." A small gasp came from the back of the room. Everyone knew about Deathworlds, but few had ever seen one. These were planets so hostile that they killed most visitors within days. Only the strongest and most dangerous species could survive on such worlds. The humans who live there have invited us to send students to their academy, the professor explained. "This is the first time in 50 years that anyone has been allowed to visit Earth safely. Who would like to volunteer?" For a moment, nobody moved. Then a small hand shot up from the third row. It belonged to Clix, a student from the Zephyrian worlds. He was about 3 feet tall with large compound eyes that took up most of his head. His insect-like body was covered in smooth green scales. "I will go," Clix said in his buzzing voice. "I want to learn about the humans and their deadly world." "Excellent," Professor Zexthara said. "Anyone else?" Another hand rose. This one belonged to Nara, a graceful being from the ocean world of Equalis. Her skin was almost transparent, showing the blue blood flowing through her veins. Gills on her neck moved slowly as she breathed the special water vapor that kept her alive. "I have studied human biology in books," Nara said, her voice soft like flowing water. "I would like to see them in person." Soon 3 more students volunteered. Thoric was a massive creature made of living rock from the mountain world of Titan. Prime, he was 8 feet tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Vex was harder to see clearly. The ethereal being flickered in and out of sight, existing partly in their dimension and partly in another. Sometimes Vex looked like a cloud of glowing gas, other times like a tall shadow with bright eyes. The last volunteer was Quinn, a plant-like being from the forest world of Verdania. Quinn had bark-like skin and root-like arms that moved slowly but surely. Small flowers bloomed and died along Quinn's body as the seasons changed in the artificial environment. "Very good," Professor Zexthara said. "You 5 will leave next week. But first, let me tell you what we know about Earth and its humans." She pressed a button and the classroom walls became screens showing images of Earth. The students saw a blue and green world covered in white clouds. It looked beautiful and peaceful. "Do not be fooled by its appearance," the professor warned. "Earth is one of the most dangerous worlds we have ever discovered. The gravity is crushing. The atmosphere is poisonous to most species. The temperature changes enough to kill you. And the life forms there are all designed to hunt and kill." The images changed to show Earth's creatures. The students saw massive predators with sharp teeth, flying hunters with talons like knives, and tiny creatures that could deliver deadly poison. Even the plants looked dangerous. "The humans are the apex predators of this world," Professor Zexthara continued. "They have conquered every part of their planet. They live in frozen wastelands, burning deserts, and deep underwater. They fear nothing." Clix raised his hand. "Professor, if humans are so dangerous, why do they want us to visit?" "That is an excellent question," she replied. "The humans say they want to share knowledge and build friendship between our species. But we must be very careful. Remember, these beings evolved on a world that kills everything else." The professor showed them more images. They saw human cities built on the sides of mountains, human vehicles that moved through crushing ocean depths, and human settlements in places where nothing else could live. "You will be staying at their colonial academy in the Rocky Mountains," Professor Zexthara explained. "It is considered one of their safer locations. You will have the best protection suits our technology can provide. Even so, you must never forget that you are visiting a Deathworld." The 5 students looked at each other nervously. They had volunteered for this mission, but now they were beginning to understand what they had signed up for. "Your transport ship leaves in 7 days, the professor said. "Use that time to prepare. Study everything you can about Earth and humans. Your lives may depend on it." As the class ended, the 5 volunteers stayed behind. They gathered in a small circle, their different forms creating a strange but determined group. "Are we making a mistake?" Nara asked, her gills fluttering with worry. "Maybe," Boric rumbled. "But we will learn things that no one else in the galaxy knows." "The humans must have some reason for inviting us," Vex said, flickering in and out of view. "Perhaps they are not as dangerous as everyone thinks." "Or perhaps they are more dangerous than we know," Quinn added quietly. Small flowers blooming nervously along the plant being's arms. Clicks buzzed his wings thoughtfully. "There is only one way to find out. We go to Earth, we observe the humans, and we learn the truth about this death world." The 5 aliens spent the next week preparing for their journey. They studied human language, human customs, and human biology. They practiced using their protective suits and emergency equipment. They said goodbye to friends and family, not knowing if they would ever see them again. On the day of departure, Professor Zexthara came to see them off. "Remember," she said, "you are not just students on this mission, you are ambassadors. What you learn about humans and Earth will shape how our entire galaxy views this species." The 5 aliens nodded solemnly. They boarded their transport ship and began the long journey to Earth. As they traveled through space, they had no idea that everything they thought they knew about humans and death worlds was about to change forever. The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's moon. Through the viewing ports, the 5 alien students got their first real look at the death world they had come to study. Earth hung in space like a blue marble, beautiful and terrifying. At the same time, "It looks so peaceful," Nara whispered, her gills fluttering nervously. "Looks can lie," Boric rumbled, his rock-like body shifting uneasily. "Remember what Professor Zexthara told us." Their ship docked at a small space station orbiting Earth. The moment they stepped off, they felt the difference. Even in the station's artificial environment, something felt wrong. The gravity seemed too strong, the air too thick, the temperature too warm. A human was waiting for them at the docking bay. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short brown hair and kind eyes. His skin was darker than the pictures they had seen, and strange marks covered his arms. The aliens would later learn these were called scars. "Welcome to Earth orbit," the human said with a smile. "I'm Jake Morrison, your liaison officer. I'll be taking care of you during your stay." The aliens stared at him in fascination and fear. This was their first time seeing a human in person. Jake looked ordinary enough, but they could sense the strength in his movements, the way he carried himself like a predator at rest. "Don't worry," Jake continued, noticing their nervous expressions. "We'll take good care of you. The Academy has prepared special quarters for each of your species." They boarded a smaller ship for the trip down to Earth's surface. As they entered the atmosphere, the aliens felt the crushing weight of the planet's gravity. Even with their protective suits, breathing became difficult. The ship shook and rattled as it pushed through the thick air. "Just a bit of turbulence," Jake said calmly, as if riding through a death trap was perfectly normal. "We'll be landing in Colorado in a few minutes." They landed at what Jake called a small airfield in the Rocky Mountains. To the aliens, it looked like a massive complex built into the side of a mountain. Human vehicles moved back and forth across the landing field, carrying supplies and people as if the crushing gravity meant nothing to them. Dr. Lisa Patterson met them at the landing pad. She was a woman in her 30s with blonde hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore what humans called casual clothes, but the aliens could see the lean muscle beneath the fabric. "Welcome to the Human Colonial Academy," she said brightly. "I'm Dr. Patterson, your xenobiology professor. I'm so excited to have you here." She picked up a heavy metal case that contained their scanning equipment. The aliens watched in amazement as she lifted it with one hand as if it weighed nothing. On their homeworlds, it would have taken 3 beings to move that case. "Let me show you to your quarters first," Dr. Patterson said, walking toward the main building, "then we'll give you a tour of the facilities." The aliens struggled to keep up with her. What she called a comfortable walking pace left them gasping for breath. The mountain air was thin, and the temperature was dropping as the sun set behind the peaks. "Is it always this cold?" Nara asked, her transparent skin turning blue with the chill. "Cold?" Dr. Patterson looked surprised. "It's actually quite warm for October. About 68 degrees. Perfect sweater weather. Perfect sweater weather." The aliens filed this phrase away for later study. To them, it felt like they were slowly freezing to death. Their quarters were inside the main academy building. Each room had been specially designed for their species' needs. Nara's room was filled with warm, humid air that felt like her ocean home. Clix had a room with special lighting that matched his homeworld sun. Borik's room was built like a cave with extra strong floors to support his weight. "Dinner is in an hour," Dr. Patterson told them. "Just follow the blue lights in the hallway. They'll take you to the cafeteria?" An hour later, the aliens made their way through the academy hallways. Human students passed them in the corridors, and each encounter was a small shock. The humans were so young, yet they moved with such confidence and strength. Children who looked barely adult by alien standards walked easily in gravity that crushed most species. The cafeteria was a large room filled with long tables. Human students sat in groups, talking and laughing as they ate. The aliens found a table near the back and sat down carefully. A human student approached their table. She was young, maybe 20 years old, with red hair and bright green eyes. She carried a tray of food that would have been too heavy for most aliens to lift. "Hi there," she said with a friendly smile. "I'm Amy Rodriguez. I'm studying biology. Here, are you the exchange students we heard about?" The aliens nodded nervously. Amy sat down across from them, setting her tray on the table. The smell of her food made them all step back in alarm. "Sorry about that," Amy said, noticing their reaction. "I'm having chili tonight. It's pretty spicy." She took a large bite of something that looked like it was on fire. The aliens watched in horror as she chewed and swallowed what appeared to be pure poison. Her eyes watered and her face turned red, but she kept eating. "This is great," Amy said between bites. "I love it when the cafeteria makes it extra hot. Extra hot." The aliens exchanged worried glances. The human was deliberately eating something that was causing her obvious pain, and she seemed to enjoy it. Other human students joined them at the table. Each one carried food that looked dangerous or toxic. One student drank a black liquid that smelled like industrial chemicals. Another ate something that made loud, crunching noises when she bit into it. "What is that?" Clix asked, pointing at the black liquid. "Coffee," the human replied. "Want some?" "It's pretty strong tonight." "Strong?" Vex asked, flickering nervously. "Yeah, about 3 times the normal caffeine content. Perfect for staying up late to study." The aliens learned that caffeine was a poison that humans consumed regularly to stay alert. They also learned that humans ate sharp, crunchy foods that would cut the mouths of most species. They consumed alcohol, which was toxic to nearly every known life form, just for fun. "You guys aren't eating?" Amy noticed. "Don't you like the food?" "We brought our own," Quinn said quietly, small flowers wilting along the plant being's arms. "That's cool," Amy said. "What's it like on your home worlds?" For the next hour, the aliens found themselves in the strangest conversation of their lives. Amy asked about their planets, their cultures, and their biology with genuine curiosity. She seemed fascinated by their different forms of life, but what shocked the aliens most was how normal Amy made everything sound. She talked about climbing mountains for fun, swimming in frozen lakes, and jumping out of aircraft with nothing but a cloth parachute. She described these activities as if they were perfectly reasonable ways to spend time. You jump out of flying. Vehicles? Boric asked, his voice rumbling with disbelief. Sure, Amy said. Skydiving is awesome. There's nothing like the rush of falling through the sky. The alien sat in stunned silence. This young human talked about deliberately falling from great heights as if it were entertainment. On their worlds, such behavior would be considered insane. As the evening ended, the aliens returned to their quarters with their minds spinning. They had expected to find a species barely surviving on a hostile world. Instead, they had found beings who seemed to treat their planet's dangers as sources of fun and excitement. I don't understand, Nara said as they gathered in the hallway. They eat poison, drink chemicals, and jump from great heights. How are they still alive? Maybe, Click said thoughtfully. We don't understand what makes something dangerous. The aliens went to sleep that night with more questions than answers. Tomorrow would bring new revelations about the humans and their strange relationship with their deadly world. The next morning brought what Dr. Patterson called a beautiful day for a nature walk. The aliens looked out their windows at the mountain landscape and saw only death waiting for them. The rocky peaks stretched up toward the sky like giant teeth, and dark forests covered the lower slopes. We'll be taking a gentle hike today, Dr. Patterson announced at breakfast. Just a short walk through the pine forest. Nothing too challenging. The aliens suited up in their protective gear. Their suits were the best technology their species could build, designed to keep them alive in the most hostile environments. Even so, they felt nervous about venturing into Earth's wilderness. Amy Rodriguez joined them as their student guide. She wore simple clothes that looked like they were made for working outdoors. Her only protection was a wide-brimmed hat and a bottle of water. She carried a large pack on her back that seemed to weigh nothing to her. Ready to see some real Earth nature? Amy asked with excitement. The group left the academy and walked onto a dirt path that wound into the forest. The aliens moved slowly, their suits helping them breathe and keeping their bodies at safe temperatures. Amy walked beside them, pointing out different plants and animals. Those are Douglas fir trees, she said, gesturing to the massive plants that rose hundreds of feet into the air. They can live for over 1,000 years. The aliens stared up at the giants in amazement. On their worlds, plants were small and gentle. These earth trees looked like they could crush a building if they fell. And there's a black bear, Amy said casually, pointing to a dark shape moving through the trees about 50 yards away. The aliens froze in terror. The creature was enormous, with thick muscles and sharp claws. It moved with the fluid grace of a perfect predator. This was clearly one of Earth's most dangerous hunters. Should we run? Nara whispered, her gills fluttering with panic. Run? Amy looked confused. Why would we run? It's just a black bear. They're pretty harmless unless you bother them or get between a mother and her cubs. Harmless. The aliens could not believe what they were hearing. The massive predator continued to move through the forest, occasionally looking in their direction. Amy watched it with calm interest, as if she were observing a harmless pet. Black bears are actually quite shy, Amy explained. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. Just don't make sudden movements or loud noises. The bear eventually wandered away, but the aliens remained shaken. They had just witnessed a human calmly observing one of Earth's apex predators. And calling it shy. As they continued down the trail, Amy pointed out more of Earth's life forms. She showed them poison ivy, a plant that could cause painful chemical burns just by touching it. She identified several types of mushrooms that were deadly if eaten. She pointed out the tracks of mountain lions, wolves, and other predators. This is what you call a gentle walk? Boric asked, his rock-like body trembling slightly. Of course, Amy replied. We're on a well-marked trail, the weather is perfect, and we're not going very high. This is about as safe as it gets in the mountains. Safe. The aliens began to understand that humans had a very different definition of that word halfway through their hike. Quinn made a mistake. The plant being reached out to touch what looked like a harmless three-leaved plant growing beside the trail. The moment Quinn's root-like fingers made contact, the plant being cried out in pain. "Poison ivy," Amy said immediately. "Don't touch your face or eyes." She dropped her pack and pulled out a small box filled with medical supplies. The aliens watched in amazement as she quickly and efficiently treated Quinn's chemical burn. She cleaned the affected area, applied medicine, and wrapped it in clean bandages. "All humans carry medical supplies?" Vex asked, flickering nervously. "Pretty much," Amy replied. "You never know when someone might get hurt outdoors. Basic first aid is something everyone learns." The aliens realized that every human expected to be injured by their environment. They carried healing supplies as naturally as they carried water. Getting hurt was so common that they prepared for it automatically. As they continued walking, the sky began to darken. Amy looked up at the gathering clouds and nodded to herself. "Looks like we might get a thunderstorm," she said. "We should find shelter just in case." "Thunderstorm?" Clicks asked, his compound eyes reflecting his fear. "Yeah, they're pretty common in the mountains during summer and fall. Nothing to worry about as long as we're not caught in the open." The first drops of rain began to fall. Within minutes, the gentle drops became a downpour. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by thunder that shook the ground. The aliens huddled together in terror as the very sky seemed to attack them. Amy led them to a rocky overhang that provided shelter from the rain. She sat down calmly and pulled out a snack from her pack, as if hiding from electrical death was. "Perfectly normal. Isn't this dangerous?" Nara asked, her voice shaking with fear. "Lightning can be dangerous if you're in the wrong place," Amy agreed. "But we're safe here. The rock will protect us, and we're not the tallest thing around." She bit into her snack and watched the lightning with what looked like enjoyment. "I love watching storms," she said. "They're so powerful and beautiful, beautiful." The aliens stared at her in disbelief. She was describing a deadly electrical attack as beautiful. "When I was little," Amy continued, "my family used to sit on our porch during thunderstorms. My dad would make popcorn and we'd watch the lightning together. Some of my best childhood memories are of storm watching." The aliens learned that humans actually enjoyed watching their planet's attempts to kill them. They found beauty in destruction and entertainment in danger. As the storm continued, Amy told them stories of her outdoor adventures. She had camped in snow so deep it buried her tent. She had hiked through deserts where the temperature could kill most life forms. She had climbed mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. "Last winter I went ice climbing," she said casually. "You use special tools to climb up frozen waterfalls. It's amazing how quiet everything gets when you're hanging from a wall of ice climbing." The aliens tried to process this information. Humans deliberately climbed frozen water formations for fun. They sought out activities that would be considered torture on most worlds. "Why do you do these things?" Quinn asked. Small flowers blooming nervously along the plant being's arms. Amy thought for a moment. "I guess because it makes me feel alive," she said. "When you're out here, dealing with real challenges, everything else seems small. Plus, there's something about pushing yourself against nature that feels ... right." Right, the aliens began to understand that humans didn't just survive on Earth. They belonged here in a way that seemed impossible to other species. The storm passed as quickly as it had come. Amy stood up and shouldered her pack, ready to continue the hike. The aliens followed her back onto the trail, their minds struggling to process what they had learned. They had witnessed a human treating deadly predators as minor inconveniences, preparing for injury as a normal part of life, and finding beauty in their planet's attempts to kill them. Most shocking of all, they had seen a human who seemed to love the very dangers that would destroy other species. As they walked back toward the academy, the aliens began to realize that everything they thought they knew about Earth and humans was wrong. This was not a species barely surviving on a hostile world. This was a species that had made the hostile world their home. The fourth day of the exchange program brought new revelations for the alien students. Dr. Patterson had arranged for them to observe human physical education classes, something she called a normal part of human development. The aliens gathered at the edge of what humans called a gymnasium. It was a large room with smooth floors and strange equipment scattered around. Human students, most of them barely adults, were preparing for what their teacher called a light workout. Coach Danny Wright was a man in his 40s with graying hair and muscles that looked like they were carved from stone. He had been an Olympic athlete, Dr. Patterson explained, one of the fastest humans ever recorded. "Today we're going to do some basic endurance training," Coach Wright announced to his students. "Just a 3-mile run, some weight training, and we'll finish with a scrimmage game, 3 miles. The aliens quickly calculated the distance in their heads. It was nearly 5 kilometers. On their worlds, such a distance would require mechanical transport. These young humans were going to travel that far using only their legs. "Everyone ready?" Coach Wright asked. "Remember, this is just a warm-up. For tomorrow's real workout, warm up." The aliens watched in amazement as 20 human students began running in circles around the gymnasium. Their feet hit the ground in steady rhythms. Their breathing remained calm and controlled. They moved like efficient machines designed for covering vast distances. "How long can they do this?" Clicks asked, his compound eyes tracking the running humans. "Hours," Dr. Patterson replied casually. "Humans are persistence hunters. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. A trained human can run for an entire day without stopping." The aliens watched the students complete lap after lap. After 30 minutes, the humans showed no signs of slowing down. Their bodies glistened with sweat, but they continued running at the same steady pace. "What is that liquid coming from their skin?" Mara asked, her gills fluttering with curiosity. "Sweat," Dr. Patterson explained. "It's how humans cool themselves. As the water evaporates, it takes heat away from the body. It's one of the most efficient cooling systems in the known galaxy." The aliens realized they were watching something incredible. Humans had evolved a biological system that allowed them to regulate their body temperature during extended physical activity. No other species they knew of had such an ability. After the run, the human students moved to what Coach Wright called the weight room. The aliens watched in horror as the young humans began lifting heavy metal objects that would crush most alien bones. "Sarah, you're up to 150 pounds on the bench press," Coach Wright said to a female student who looked barely out of her teens. "Good progress, 150 pounds. The aliens quickly converted the measurement. This young human female was repeatedly lifting nearly 70 kilograms above her chest. She did this 15 times, rested briefly, then did it again. "The average human can lift about half their body weight," Dr. Patterson explained. "Trained humans can lift much more. Coach Wright once lifted over 400 pounds. 400 pounds. The aliens stared at Coach Wright with new respect and fear. This human could lift more than 180 kilograms. On most worlds, such strength would be considered superhuman. The weight training continued for another hour. The aliens watched humans lift, pull, and push masses that would require mechanical assistance on their homeworlds. The students treated this as normal exercise, chatting and laughing as they performed feats of incredible strength. "Now for the fun part," Coach Wright announced. "Let's play some rugby." The aliens had never heard of rugby. They quickly learned it was a game where humans deliberately crashed into each other while trying to carry a ball across a field. What they witnessed next challenged everything they thought they knew about intelligent behavior. The human students divided into 2 teams and began what looked like organized warfare. They ran at each other at full speed, collided with tremendous force, and then got up and did it again. The impacts would have killed most alien species, but the humans seemed to enjoy them. "This is considered play?" Boric asked, his rock-like body trembling as he watched a particularly violent collision. "Rugby is actually a pretty gentle sport," Dr. Patterson replied. "You should see American football or ice hockey. Those can get really intense." Gentle. The aliens watched a human student get knocked to the ground, bounce back up, and immediately return to the game. What humans called gentle would be considered attempted murder on most worlds. After the physical education class, the aliens accompanied Dr. Patterson to observe human children at play. They visited what humans called an elementary school, where 6-year-old humans engaged in activities that would hospitalize most young aliens. The children climbed metal structures that reached dangerous heights. They swung from bars using only their arm strength. They ran and jumped and rolled on hard surfaces that would break alien bones. Most shocking of all, they seemed to love every minute of it. Human children are naturally tougher than most adult aliens, Dr. Patterson explained as they watched a young girl hang upside down from a metal bar. They need to be. Earth requires a certain level of physical durability just to survive. The aliens observed human children for 2 hours. They watched 6-year-olds perform feats of strength and agility that would challenge adult aliens. The children fell down, got scraped and bruised, and immediately returned to their dangerous games. "Don't they get injured?" Vex asked, flickering nervously as a child jumped from a high platform. "Of course they do," Dr. Patterson said. "Getting hurt is part of learning." Human children who are protected from all injury never learn to judge risk properly. A few cuts and bruises teach them to be more careful. The aliens realized that humans deliberately allowed their young to be injured as part of their education. Getting hurt was not something to be avoided, but something to be learned from. Their final stop was a history class taught by Professor Carol Jenkins. She was a woman in her 50s who specialized in human military history. What she taught the aliens changed their understanding of humans forever. "Humans have fought wars in every environment on Earth," Professor Jenkins explained. "We've battled in frozen tundra where the temperature would kill most life. We fought in deserts hot enough to melt metal. We've had battles underwater, in the air, and even in space." She showed them pictures of human soldiers in different environments. The aliens saw humans surviving in conditions that would be impossible for most species. They adapted using technology, tactics, and sheer determination. "The human military has a saying," Professor Jenkins continued, "adapt and overcome. When faced with impossible conditions, humans don't retreat. They find a way to survive and win." The aliens learned that humans had conquered every biome on their planet. They lived in the frozen Arctic, the burning deserts, the crushing ocean depths, and the thin air of high mountains. There was no place on Earth that humans had not made their home. During World War II, Professor Jenkins said, human soldiers fought in conditions that would kill most aliens within hours. They did this for years across multiple continents in every season and weather condition imaginable. The aliens began to understand that humans were not just survivors of a death world. They were conquerors who had claimed every hostile environment as their territory. Their entire species had been forged in the fires of constant danger and emerged stronger for it. As the day ended, the aliens gathered in their quarters to discuss what they had learned. They had witnessed physical capabilities that seemed impossible, observed children who were tougher than most adult aliens, and learned about a species that had conquered every environment on their planet. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," Click said, his compound eyes reflecting deep thought. "Humans aren't victims of their world. They're its masters." The other aliens nodded in agreement. They were beginning to understand that Earth hadn't created a species of survivors. It had created a species of conquerors who saw every challenge as something to overcome rather than something to fear. The final week of the exchange program brought the most important lesson of all. The alien students had asked to see humans in what they called their natural habitat. They wanted to understand how humans lived when they were not in the safety of their academy. Park Ranger Michelle Adams met them at the entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park. She was a woman in her 30s with sun-darkened skin and the lean build of someone who spent her life outdoors. Her eyes held the calm confidence that the aliens had learned to recognize in all humans. "Welcome to my office," Michelle said with a smile, gesturing to the vast wilderness that stretched in all directions. "Today we're going to hike up to Lake. Hey, it's only about 5 miles, but we'll gain 2,000 feet in elevation." The aliens looked at the mountain trail that disappeared into the rocks above them. Even with their advanced life support systems, they knew this journey would push them to their limits. Michelle carried only a small backpack and a bottle of water. The trail gets pretty steep in places, Michelle warned them, but the views are worth it. On a clear day like today, you can see for 100 miles from the top. They began climbing. Within the first mile, the aliens were struggling. The thin mountain air made breathing difficult, even with their suits helping them. The rocky trail was uneven and dangerous, with loose stones that could send them tumbling down the mountainside. Michelle moved up the trail like she was walking on flat ground. She pointed out different plants and animals, explained the geology of the mountains, and shared stories of the park's history. Her breathing never changed, even as they climbed higher and higher. "How do you do this?" Nara gasped, her gills working overtime to extract oxygen from the thin air. "Practice," Michelle replied. "I've been hiking these mountains for 15 years. Your body adapts to the altitude after a while." Adapts. The aliens were learning that humans could adjust to almost any environment given enough time. What killed other species, humans simply grew accustomed to. After 2 hours of climbing, they reached a rest stop at 11,000 feet above sea level. The aliens collapsed on the rocks, exhausted by the journey. Michelle sat down beside them and pulled out her lunch, eating calmly as if she had just walked across a room. "The air up here has about 30% less oxygen than at sea level," Michelle explained. "Most people need time to adjust. But humans have lived at high altitudes for thousands of years. Some of our cities are built even higher than this." She pointed to the peaks around them. "People climb those mountains for fun," she said. "The tallest peaks on Earth are over 29,000 feet high. Humans have climbed them with nothing but determination and basic equipment." The aliens stared at the jagged peaks that rose like knives into the sky. The idea of humans voluntarily climbing such deadly heights seemed impossible to believe. "Why?" Quinn asked, small flowers wilting along the plant being's arms. "Why do humans do such dangerous things?" Michelle thought for a moment. "Because they're there," she said. "Because pushing yourself against nature teaches you things about yourself you can't learn any other way. Because when you overcome something that should be impossible, you prove that impossible is just another word for difficult." As they continued up the trail, Michelle shared her philosophy about humans and their relationship with Earth. She explained that humans didn't see their planet as an enemy trying to kill them. They saw it as a teacher, a partner, and a home. "Earth doesn't try to kill us," Michelle said as they navigated a particularly dangerous section of trail. "It just is what it is. We've learned to read its moods, respect its power, and find our place within it." The aliens watched her move through the rocky terrain with fluid grace. She read the landscape like a book, noticing small changes in weather, identifying safe paths through dangerous areas, and making decisions that kept them all alive. "Every human learns these skills?" Burek asked, his rock-like body struggling with the uneven ground. "Most of us," Michelle replied. "Growing up on Earth means learning to survive in Earth's environment. We don't think of it as survival skills. We think of it as just knowing how to live." They were nearing the lake when they encountered something that changed everything the aliens thought they knew about humans. A mountain lion appeared on the trail ahead of them, blocking their path. The great cat was beautiful and deadly, a perfect predator with golden fur and muscles like steel cables. The aliens prepared for death. This was clearly one of Earth's apex predators, and they were trapped on a narrow mountain trail with nowhere to run. But Michelle's reaction was completely different from what they expected. She stopped walking and calmly assessed the situation. She made herself appear larger by raising her arms above her head. She maintained eye contact with the mountain lion while speaking in a calm, steady voice. "Easy there, beautiful," she said to the cat. "We don't want any trouble. This is your mountain, and we're just passing through." The mountain lion stared at her for a long moment. The aliens could feel the tension in the air, the electric moment when predator met predator. Then, slowly, the great cat stepped off the trail and disappeared into the rocks. "Why did it leave?" Vex asked, flickering with nervous energy. "Because it recognized what I am," Michelle replied simply. "Mountain lions are apex predators, but so are humans. It decided that fighting wasn't worth the risk." The aliens realized they had just witnessed something incredible. A human had faced down one of Earth's most dangerous predators using nothing but confidence and understanding. The mountain lion had retreated not because it was afraid, but because it recognized Michelle as an equal. They reached the lake as the sun was setting behind the peaks. The water was a perfect mirror, reflecting the mountains and sky in its still surface. The aliens stood in silence, overwhelmed by the beauty and the journey they had taken to reach it. "This is why we do it," Michelle said quietly. "This is why we climb mountains and explore dangerous places. Not because we want to conquer them, but because we want to be part of them." As they made their way back down the mountain in the fading light, the aliens finally understood the truth about humans and Earth. Humans weren't the victims of a death world. They weren't even just survivors who had adapted to hostile conditions. Humans were Earth's children, shaped by their world into something unique in the galaxy. They had learned to find beauty in danger, strength in adversity, and home in a place that would kill most other species. They didn't just survive on Earth, they belonged there in a way that made them part of the planet itself. The exchange program ended the next day. As the aliens prepared to return to their homeworlds, they struggled to find words for what they had learned. How could they explain to their people that humans weren't dangerous because they were violent, but because they were so perfectly adapted to their world that they made other species feel small and fragile by comparison? "What will you tell them?" Jake Morrison asked as they boarded their transport ship. "The truth," Clicks replied. "That Earth isn't called a death world because it kills everything. It's called a death world because it creates life so strong that it makes the rest of the galaxy uncomfortable." The aliens returned to Kepler Station with a new understanding of humans and Earth. They had learned that the galaxy's classification system was wrong. Earth wasn't a death world because it was hostile to life. It was a death world because it had produced life so perfectly adapted to hostility that it redefined what it meant to be alive. The question that haunted them as they traveled back to their peaceful worlds was not how humans survived on Earth, but how the galaxy would survive when humans finally reached the stars.